peace and prosperity.
At some point, every president considers his or her legacy. After all, only 43 men have ever held the gig here, so there's not a lot for a president to compare themselves to. And for President Obama, his tenure in the White House has had two very distinct and different takeaways. First 2 years, a lot actually got done. Democrats in control of the entire federal government. That's a lot of people, didn't get done enough, but then you got the second 2 years marked by gridlock, partisan politics, a lot of he said, she said. So, are there any points of agreement on the horizon that may help seal the president's legacy? And trust me, this is a president who cares a lot about that. Andrew, you've been looking into what may or may not be something these guys could agree on.
And rather than try to just focus on, boy, wouldn't it be great if the president was able to do this, I was looking for areas where there seems to be agreement or movement where there might actually be able to get something done, or an opening for bipartisan compromise where the political winds might indicate a chance for that deal to happen. Unfortunately, list of subjects is a rather short one. First up, some follow-up to two of the most sweeping and controversial laws from the president's first term. Just about everybody agrees now that the debate over health care and financial reform are over. Obamacare and Dodd-Frank going to remain the law of the land. They're going to stand for years to come. But both laws need more work before they can be fully implemented. It's not just having the laws on the books, it's how the laws actually work, how they play out, the regulations that come with them. That still needs to be settled in both of these things, and that provides incentives for the parties to work together, making sure the laws don't do any unneeded harm. So what new laws might be awaiting the president in his second term? Not a lot, and not much to build a legacy on, at least at this point. Republicans are opening up to some version of a DREAM Act, but there's still lots of GOP opposition to a DREAM Act that provides a path to citizenship, so both that and immigration reform overall could be more hope than reality. There is an agreement on a need for a revised energy policy, but the parties are pretty much miles apart on how best to focus their energies, or ours. New trade deals that boost U.S. imports seem likely, but that's not exactly legacy material. And while some sort of deal on Hurricane Sandy helping out the states in the areas that were in crisis, seems like a mortal lock at this point. There's only been minor chatter about how to go further on climate change. The takeaway, expect more gridlock unless the political winds really shift in dramatic fashion. And if there is a legacy issue out there for President Obama's second term, it's one that's either hard to see right now, or it may come up as developments dictate, let's say on the international front, somewhere where we're just, we don't have any irons in the fire on this just yet, and we don't have any way of knowing. I'm curious what the table thinks might be those kinds of legacy issues.
I think
going
on
forward.
the healthcare, I think there's a big part where, while it's traditionally defense attorneys are a liberal constituency, it certainly helped with fundraising. I think there could be a deal on tort reform. And I think politically it's popular. I think that he'll get more people to go along with Obamacare elements that they don't like. And I don't think it's just Republicans who don't like certain parts of it. I know hospital administrators, regardless of their policies, there's parts that they find unwieldy.
But I think that'll just cement Obamacare, and the health care reform is...
I'll give you another one. I think immigration reform, if you took the same bill that George Bush tried to pass and put it right now in front, there'd be enough support. And what it would be politically, enough Republicans say, please, Democrats, help me out here. We'll give you the base minimum. We'll get the safest seats for these guys to go along with it. And then you'll give cover for the rest of us. But we all know this is something that will help us politically, too. They will not stand in the way of immigration reform.
I think the reality here is you have tiers of issues, and depending on how we fix the fiscal cliff, if entitlements are left out, they clearly become tier one in terms of legacy issues that the president has to fix. Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid to the states, et cetera. That's the first tier. Assuming those get wrapped into the grand bargain or some fiscal cliff resolution, then the next tier down are things that we've talked about. Immigration, energy policy. Those are things that...
Well, energy policy, make the person at home understand how their life would change. What could they agree on?
Well, I mean, this is a radical idea, but I'll give you one. It was reported last week that by, I think, 2020 or 2030, the U.S. is going to be a net exporter of energy, which means we will be producing more energy than we use as a nation.
But how do you go about doing that? Do you expand drilling? Do you increase solar? Do you increase wind?
But the question is, we've been hearing president before president say this nation needs to be energy independent. If we're a net exporter of energy by 2030, why can't we be energy independent?
Dominic, it's funny, Andrew and I were talking. Last night was the first of the two-part series of Ken Burns, right? He was talking about, obviously, the Dust Bowl and what happened in this country. And I know a little bit about this, having worked with the FDR folks. They literally built trees across the middle of America here, and it saved an entire region of this country. And it was a major infrastructure project, and you got the TVA. I won't bore everybody with the history. We like to build stuff in this country. And I think after Sandy, I know people don't like big government, but I think people's opinions change when I don't hear anybody saying there's no such thing as global warming anymore. If you tried a big infrastructure project and they said this is how many jobs, some of them in Republican districts too, not just Democrat districts, there's a chance that some stuff could get built. You buy that?
No doubt about it. I would agree with that 1,000%. But I also see this president in particular, and it may not sit well, we mentioned entitlements, it may not sit well with the left. But remember how Bill Clinton sort of stole welfare reform from Bob Dole, Newt Gingrich, from the Republicans, and then he's standing there signing one of the toughest welfare reform bills. I really see President Obama doing something right along those lines when it comes to cutting entitlements, because he doesn't have any more campaigns. I think it's going to be education. That's something that's very important to him. He knows that without the value of education, he would have never have made it. And it's certainly going to be a deal on immigration, because without immigration, well, let's put it this way, Republicans need immigration for survival.
And I think he'd like the Republicans to raise, let's say, not only mean test Social Security, but I don't think he'd stand in the way if they wanted to raise the retirement age. I think both parties can help each other out here.
I think they can. I agree with much of what Dominic said, except for one thing. Bill Clinton signed welfare reform because he had to get reelected. Let's face it.
Well, think about it now. Workfare was under Bill Clinton here, and people forget that part. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we take a look at how storm-ravaged areas in our region are coping right now. That and a lot more after this. Stay with us.
So